Now we'll be going through Meow through Electrode, which Pokemon are endangered and which ones are common. So next Pokemon is Person and Meowth. Okay, so yeah, we're going to we're going to be looking at both both Person, both its evolutions and pre-evolutions as well. So yeah, in the games, okay, Meowth is found. Okay, for Meowth is a version exclusive, but Meowth is found in Routes 5, 6, 7, 8, which means Meowth has a small contained range. And it's also found in Routes 48 and 49, as well as found at night in Crystal. Also in Fire and Leaf Green, they have been introduced to various areas on the Sevi Islands, which is also likely because people probably introduced them to those areas as well. In any other games, the Alolan forms are found in Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, likely because people keep Meowths as pets as well. And of course, throughout the whole Sword and Shield game, they've been introduced into a few areas in the Growlithe form, which means Meowths have a lot of different areas. They're also found in Scarlet and Violet as well. And its evolution person, isn't really found in many areas in the wild, except for Route 7, but it's likely very much more. Again, it is pretty strange that the evolution is much more rare than the actual well, pre-evolution, which means poisons are probably easier to avoid, or it's probably as a game imitation or something like that. But assessing based off of it, I think I'll put Meowth as near threatened because in its natural habitat, which is Kanto, because of how limited its range is. It's also found in Johto and scattered areas, which means Meowth is a pretty common Pokemon in other regions, likely introduced, and also has various subspecies for other regions, which are regional forms. I would classify the whole Meowth and Person species, the wild version, as near threatened. Psyduck and Golduck, however, are very common in various regions, since especially in Sinnoh, but they're very common and they're found in several routes, so Route 24, 25, Seafoam Islands, Cerulean City, Cerulean Gym. For some reason, if I'm inside the gym, Safari Zone as well. Also, they're found Route 6 and 45 in Ilex Forest through surfing. And in Fire Red, they have a lot of areas in the Sevi Islands. And in Diamond Pearl, they're pretty common as well. And also in Sun and Moon, they're found in various areas. So that means these Pokemon could be migratory Pokemon. Is a possibility exists, but again, Psyduck and Golduck do not fly. So it's likely they have a very large range, like real life ducks do. So we are going to be listing Golduck as least concern. So Golduck and Psyduck are in no danger of going extinct. Then we have Mankey and Primeape as well. So we'll be counting both, we'll be counting all games, obviously. But they're found in early game routes in routes 5, 6, 7, 8 as the alternate version for Meowth. Also in routes 22 and 23 in yellow as well. Routes 9 and 42 in Generation 2 as well. We're not counting like swarms or Pokemon radar stuff, as they are in those areas, but they're probably very, very rare. Okay, or probably introduced. The next area that you can find Mankey and Primeape is Route 3 and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and Sun and Moon as well. But it was likely they were introduced to that region. But also they are found in Scarlet and Violet. They also even have an evolution there. In the native range, they're pretty well, kind of like Meowth. They're not a very common Pokemon, but they're also found in Area 1, Area 5, in South Province and West Province as well, and also pretty common in the hidden treasures of Area 0 as well, and also be kind of common in Annihilate as well. I think that Primeape might be least concerned because Galar has an evolution for, which means they are pretty common in that region as well. I know I could, I think that Mankey and Primeape could be found in several regions at once. Next is Growlithe and Arcanine. So Arcanine 9. We'll be mostly just using the game data for Growlithe, as Arcanine cannot really be found in the wild for some weird reason. And they're pretty well only being found in Route 7 and 8 in the Pokemon Mansion as well. And they are not a common account, only being found 10% of the time in red version, being a version exclusive to Vulpix, but in later games are already found more. Yes, they are. They're found way more commonly in Sword and Shield, likely to keep the version exclusive tradition, but also in Pokemon Legends Arceus, they have been found to be way more common, which means likely that considering the play found common amongst, after the Jennies, let's likely, breed them as well. They're pretty decently common in the home region. They're pretty, not pretty common. They're pretty rare in the home region, but they were actually much more common in the wild back in the day. If you look at Pokemon Legends Arceus, but also they were pretty common in Galar, were being found in so many areas as well. I think in Kanto, they'll be listed as vulnerable to extinction, as they have a small range and they're also pretty rare. But you also have to count they are found pretty common in Europe, or at least the Pokemon version of Europe, versus Galar and Paldea. For some reason, they're not really found in Kalos. They must be been eradicated in that region, or they're likely been introduced to both regions, and likely that's why they haven't been really found in there. Or they're likely being reintroduced, which I'll list the species as vulnerable, as they have been reintroduced pretty successfully to various regions, but in Kanto, they're very rare still as well. So, the Cantonian form and the Husey form is extinct. Next is Poliwag and Poliwag and Poliwrath. So, Poliwrath and Poliwag and that entire line of Pokemon are they in danger of going extinct anytime soon? Well, they are actually very, very common in red and blue and yellow. Okay? And also very common in gold, silver, and crystal, which means they're least concerned. There were no danger of going extinct anytime soon. We don't even have to look at other reasons because of how common these Pokemon are. Then we have Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam. So we'll be just looking at listing Alakazam, obviously, for the Pokemon, but Abra and its evolution, since they're found in various areas as well. Yeah. So they're very well in Route 24 and Route 25, and also found in the game corner. Also, they're much more common in Zoto, which means there's likely a conversation effort to save Abra and reintroduce them to areas, because they're found in way more routes than they were in the 3-year time scale, which means conversation efforts for this Pokemon have been working. They're also found in Granite Cave and Pokemon Generation 3 as well, and Gen 4 is found in Route 203 and 215 as well. But again, Abra evolves pretty early as well, and we have to take that into account. Okay. So we have to take account what Kadabras can be found. Okay. Because Kadabras already have evolution to Abra, and how common are they? So they're only found in Cerulean Cave, which means they were either hunted to extinction, or or habitat loss was so horrible on them that they were restricted to a few routes in Cerulean Cave. Same thing with Route 8, but in Generation 4 they're found in Route 215 and Victory Road as well, but they're not really found in many areas besides the expansion pass of Sword and Shield, but they're also much more common back in the day. I would put Alakazam as vulnerable to extinction, since I think there are conversation efforts to bring the species back from extinction because it's a very popular psychic type Pokemon. Also, I do think there's a possibility that Pokemon can be overcatched, which could be a very big possibility, because you're taking the Pokemon from the wild as well, which is something pretty bad, for a Pokemon, especially if it's overcatched because it's a very popular Pokemon. Next is Machamp. But I do think Alakazam, like with Arcanine, conversation efforts out saving the species from extinction. Next is Machop and Metzok. These two Pokemon, of course, found in Generation 1 and only found in Rock Tunnel and Victory Road, but also found in Rock Tunnel and Mount Mortar, but not in Victory Road because that's a different Victory Road in the, games. But they also are pretty common in Johto, including its evolution as well. I think the Pokemon is mostly found in mountainous areas, which is very mountainous areas and cave areas, which are very lacking in Generation 1, which means it's likely they're not very common in Generation 1 because their habitats are very poorly mapped. Same thing with Soak, because these Pokemon are mostly common in mountains and caves, which are, a rare commodity, like Victory Road and stuff, Rock Tunnel, Mount Mortar, places like that, or in Diamond Pearl, a much more mountainous region. Then Sinnoh is a much more mountainous region as well. They're also pretty common in Sword and Sealed as well. I'm going to put Machamp as least concern, as the Pokemon seem to be pretty common in their habitat and also pretty common in other regions, including Sinnoh and Galar, which are mostly found in more mountainous habitat or more rugged habitats, which I think they're more adapted to, which I think the more mountainous habitats are not really explored, which means a lot of the mountainous habitats in Johto and Kanto are not really much explored or mapped out in the regions. There's not really many routes, so there's probably a lot of habitat where Machoke and Machamp can live without human interference. Next is Bellsprout and Weeping Bell. So Bellsprout and Weeping Bell are basically just the counterparts to Artis. But I think the difference between these Pokemon is that these Pokemon, which are originally the counterparts for Artis and Gloom, they're basically found mostly all of the same routes, as Artis and Gloom, and they're pretty common in the regions as well. They have also been introduced to Sinnoh and the Raider routes, and they are pretty common in Brilliant Silent Silent Power in the underground, but in the original region Kanto, and also they are found in the areas of Hidden Treasure Zero as well. So we're going to be listing Victory Bell, Weeping Bell, and obviously Victory Bell as least concerned. So fans of Victory Bell, well, you don't have to worry about it anymore, about them going extinct. Tentacool. Do we even have to explain this Pokemon? It is one of the most common. Tentacool and Tentacool are often memed about in the older games as basically the only Pokemon you find in the water. Okay, basically, wherever there's water, these things are found. Okay, especially in Gen 3, where they're very common. Gen 4, or Gen 6, they're a bit more rarer. Gen 7 brings them back as a much more common Pokemon, and they're not really found in later regions, but Gen 1 through 7, these Pokemon are very common in the wild, and yeah, as well. So very, same thing with Geodude and Graveler. Basically, wherever there's a cave or a rugged habitat, Geodude and Gravelers are very common Pokemon as well. They even have a regional variant, and yeah, they only may appear. Geodude and Graveler only may appear in a handful of routes, which is mostly caves, and of course in Gold and Silver they're only found in a handful of routes, but in multiple regions they are very common, especially in Diamond and Pearl, where there's a lot of mountains and caves. Which makes the Pokemon very widespread, and especially in Pokemon Legends Arceus when there were a lot of, human settlements yet as well, makes the Pokemon pretty well. Not pretty well, pretty common. And they've mostly been found in caves and, especially in, even in modern day region of Sinnoh, which is basically, Paldea, but in the future, these Pokemon are still very, very, very common. It's still pretty common in even in the own region, which are mostly restricted to caves, but again, the mountainous regions are not very explored. Okay, same thing with the Alolan forms as well. These Pokemon are very common in various regions. Next is Ponyta and Rapidash as well. So Ponyta is, of course, in the horse Pokemon Gen 1, and they're only found in the Pokemon Mansion. The only found Route 22, 26, 27, 28 in Mount Silver as well. Diamond Pearl, they found a few routes as well. And Seel, there's a Galarian form as well. And I think mostly the Ponyta and Rapidash populations are probably feral populations, especially the ones in the Pokemon Mansion. I think the wild ones are found like Sinnoh and areas like that. And of course, Johto, where they have been found. I think there have been some conservation efforts in the Pokemon regions, which mostly in Johto, though, as well. But even in Kanto, they have been reintroduced to various routes, including Route 22, to Route 26, which is also in Kanto, to Route 28, which is also in Kanto. So they have been reintroduced to various areas, and also they're pretty common in various areas. I would still list them as vulnerable, as they're not found in a very wide range, not a very wide range of habitats. They're also a bit common in Sinnoh, mostly likely feral, Ponyta and Rapidash. So I think in the wild area, I'll give them the same ranking as the Parazaki's wild horse, which is endangered. Likely, they are trying to reintroduce the last wild versions to various habitats where they used to be very much more common as well. Next is Slowpoke and Slowbro and Slowking. So, we're using Slowbro for this assessment here. Slowking is in the same evolution line, so they won't really count here. And the assessment for Slowpoke. Okay, and also Slowbro, which is much more rarer because it's an evolution, and, but we're using Slowpoke for the whole line. And basically, they're found in mostly water routes, or Seafoam Islands, Route 10, Celadon City. So basically, they're found along the coastal regions in Red and Blue, but also in Gen 2, they're found in the Slowpoke Wall. Well, I think the animals must have been hunted to extinction with the exception of Slowpoke Walls and Tojo Falls, which means they're protected areas. But in Leaf Green, the Pokemon is much more common. Man, but we're not using those games. Those games are not really canon as well. Which means the Pokemon has usually been hunted a lot and are very rare. They're also found in Sun and Moon. And yeah, Slowbro and Slowpoke I'm going to be classifying as critically endangered. They're mostly hunted for their tails, which have been confirmed by the games that they're hunted for their tails, which is a very, kind of very disgusting thing to do. That they'll do this to our boy Slowpoke, but again, basically they have been banished to basically protected areas, like various real life creatures, which is from Kanto to Johto region because of Team Rocket mostly. In other regions, they're much more common. Then we have Magnemite and Magneton as well. And we'll not be playing Magnezone, as Magnezone was likely discovered in Generation 4. That was likely when they categorized the Pokemon as well, but let's assume Magnezone can exist. They're mostly found around human areas. So Generation 1, they're found around the power plant. Golden Silver, they're found on Route 6, 11, 38, and 39. So basically, they're found around the human areas as well. Surprisingly, they're not found around the power plant anymore. Maybe they were excavated or exterminated from the power plant. But in an effort to save the species in Kanto, they were introduced to other routes around humanity as well. But also, they're also found in Fugo Ironworks in Route 222, and also in various areas years as well. Likely, these Pokemon were created by humans, as in Resident Arceus, they did not exist at all and only exist through space-time distortions. Likely, they're mostly a human-made Pokemon, and likely mostly exist around human areas as well. So we putting them as what would we classify in Magnezone in these in areas? Okay, I think will be not really assessed. I think these Pokemon are not really gonna be assessed as they're human-made Pokemon, but we still assess them as Pokemon. I think because of humans, them being so common around human areas, Magneton and Magnemite will be listed as least concern, as they're still found mostly around abandoned power plants, and that's where they mostly appear as well. Also, they're pretty popular, they're pretty common around human settlements as well here. So, next is Farfetch'd. So, this is the infamous endangered Pokemon, okay, along with Lapras, which we will probably get into the next episode. So, Farfetch'd is a Pokemon in Generation 1, and we know, okay, it is very seen and is basically, basically they have been saved from extinction. So, basically, they're very rare Pokemon. They're found in Routes 48 and 49 in Gold and Silver, but they're very rare in most games as well. That's until you get to Generation 7, where they're found in the Galarian region much more commonly, but even then, they're still pretty rare. I think because of the compensation efforts from Gen 1 to Gen 2, they've been introduced to do Routes 48 and 49 and rated the Safari Zone, but that doesn't really count, or 49 and 48, which were extended as well. And also, they're pretty still a bit common in Sword and Shield. Well, we're going to be listing them as endangered, like it is in the Dex entry. And that will go for Swordfest as well. So next is Dodrio. Yeah, we live in a world where Slowpoke is more endangered than Farfetch'd because of the Slowpoke tails. So Dodrio and Doduo and Dodrio are actually pretty common in Johto and Kanto. They're found in Route 16, 17, and 18, basically the Cycling Road, and Safari Zone, which means they likely just escapees from the Safari Zone, and they likely establish a small population in this area. Gold and Silver are a bit more common in Routes 22, 26, 27, 28, and Mount Silver. Mostly the Kanto routes, have been reintroduced. Ruby and Sapphire are found in the Safari Zone as well. But is there a possible reason where they originated from? Well, we do not know. But based off the amount of routes they're found, I'm going to be classifying them as endangered, as they're found in the small areas of routes, and regular Safari Zones created to preserve Doduo and Dodrio. Next to the two most boring Pokemon is Seel and Dewgong. Okay, yeah, no one likes either of these Pokemon, but we have to talk about them anyways. So yeah, no one says Seel and Dewgong are their favorite Pokemon, but they're mostly only found in Seafoam Islands, which must mean they might. I think considering the fact that they are there aren't really many icy areas in Kanto. I think these Pokemon must have been, vagrants from an area and they established a population. Same thing with the Royal Islands population and Icefall Cave. These Pokemon mostly prefer colder habitats as well. Well, and we don't know the original reason because Game Freak loves to forget about these Pokemon's existence. So I'm assuming they're from a more polar region and they're mostly vagrant Pokemon. Yeah. They were finally remembered in the hidden area of Area Zero, but they're mostly very rare. They're also found in the Seaside Cave and Giant Chasm. There's a very likely possibility that Dewgong and Seel are much more common in Arctic and cold areas, and we haven't really had a region that was mostly like polar region, and we might never really get one. But in the Pokemon anime, they're mostly found in more colder and polar regions as well. But based on the current range of the Pokemon, we'll be classifying Dewgong and Seel as critically endangered, as they're mostly found in small pockets of habitat that exist for it. Maybe global warming exists in Pokemon world, and that's why these Pokemon are very rare as well. mostly existing in very small, isolated habitats. Next is Grimer and Muk. These are human-made Pokemon as well. Okay, these are really human-made Pokemon. Okay, these Pokemon are created because of the Industrial Revolution, and mostly like with Magnezone and Magneton, exist around human habitats as well, as shown in Generation 7 as well. So yeah, these Pokemon are much more common around human habitats, and we will not really be evaluating Muk and Grimer. Maybe we won't really be evaluating Magneton because these Pokemon are mostly just human-made Pokemon, but they are still their own individual species. We'll not be discounting these Pokemon's existence. It's just these are human-made Pokemon. Same thing with Porygon Z. These Pokemon are just created by humans because of our effects on the climate and world of Pokemon. Next is Grimer. Oh, wait, we already did Grimer and Muk. Next Pokemon's on the list. And yeah, we will not be counting spin-off games, as those games are not canon. We'll only be counting the main series games. No remakes. No Let's Go. Okay. Then we have Zelda and Cloyster. So Zelda and Cloyster are Pokemon that exist in Generation 1. And they're following actually a variety of routes. Route 6, 11, 19, and 20. 21 Vermilion City, Seafoam Island to Cinnabar Island. Which means they're likely found in the deep sea. And are actually likely very common in Kanto and Johto and other regions as well. Yeah. So we'll be racing Cloyster as least concern. This Pokemon is in no chance of going extinct anytime soon. Same thing with Gengar. So Gengar and Haunter are pretty common around, graveyards and stuff. Which must mean, Gengar and Gastly, they're not going extinct because they're dead Pokemon. They're already dead. And they're always found around graveyards and areas of dead Pokemon. And they're also very, very common in other regions. So basically, as long as Pokemon exist, Gastly, Gengar, and Haunter will exist. Next is Onix and Steelix, which, yes, we'll be counting Steelix as well. So Onix, and we'll also be counting Steelix, because Steelix will be found in the wild in several Pokemon games. Onix has always been pretty well in the Pokemon games. I think that was intentional, but they're found in a various, actually, amount of routes, including Union Cave, Victory Road, Silver Cave, Rock Tunnel, and, Mount Silver Cave. And they're also found in the same areas. This means, likely, they are mostly found in caves, and mostly kind of like Diglett and Dugtrio. They mostly live underground, and mostly very rarely appear amongst humans. We'll be listing Onix and Steelix as data deficient, as they are probably pretty common underground as well. So, same thing with Steelix as well. These Pokemon are very, very rarely seen by humans, so they'll be listed as very deficient. Next is Hypno, another Pokemon I don't really like. If Hypno disappeared, I don't think anyone will miss Hypno and Drowsy. Some people probably will, but they're only found on Route 11s, 44, and 45. Yeah, these Pokemon are pretty rare, okay? And they're not really found in many regions. They're also found in Scarlet and Violet and in various areas, but they're very rare in most regions. And Route 11 in Kanto, Drowsy is a bit common, but I think mostly because Drowsy might be a very endangered Pokemon. And it was likely hunted for its meat, and likely because, people do actually eat meat in the Pokemon anime and the games. It has to come from somewhere. Okay? Likely has to come from somewhere. Okay? You can't tell me that, there are real life cows in Pokemon. Next is Krabby and Kingler. Krabby and Kingler are basically just crabs, and they are very, very common in most of the regions they appear in. So, I think this is a very easy one. Then the last assessment of the day is Electrode. Is Electrode endangered? Well, Electrode is a very strange Pokemon, as very similar to Magnemite and Magneton, but also, Husey can have an insight about the evolution of Electrode and Voltorb. These Pokemon are mostly found around human areas as well, and they're likely, created by, But Husey region, they used to have a more natural form. I think assuming similar to real life animals, they basically evolved their skin to become more like a Pokeball in the Pokemon games to basically, survive the habitat being destroyed. Basically, as an adaptation, they gained the electric typing and are mostly found around human activity and human areas, including Route 10 and the power plant as well. And also they're found in Team Rocket HQ, which must mean in the power plant, they were basically just all taken away by Team Rocket. Also, they found in New Marvile and also many human habitats, including Route 110 and New Marvile, and in various areas in Scarlet and Violet. I think they have adapted quite well to the new rule, and we listed them as near threatened. And that is it for the updated list. So there are some Pokemon that are very in danger of going extinct, including Dewgong, which mostly because Game Freak neglects that Pokemon's existence, but I don't blame them, and Slowpoke because of the hunting of Slowpoke tails. Dodrio is also pretty endangered alongside Hypno, and also we decided not to give Muck and Magneton an evaluation because they're man-made Pokemon. We'll also probably give the same treatment to Porygon as well here, and yeah. So the most endangered Pokemon, I think, besides the starters, as of now, I think might be Dewgong because of their very scattered and isolated populations, and also they're pretty common in those areas, but because any subpopulation can go extinct if they're overhunted again, and they're mostly very isolated areas away from humans. So, Dewgong must be a very endangered Pokemon. Also, Parasect, I think, is also pretty endangered Pokemon, because they used to be far more common before, human settlement, and now basically are mostly extinct as well. And also, we will reassess Pokemon when newer games come out, and yeah. Fortunately for Farfetch'd, they're not really going extinct anytime soon. Same thing with Rapidash and Dodrio. We don't really have many Pokemon that have been listed as vulnerable besides Wigglytuff and Arcanine and Alakazam, but we'll probably get way more in the future, considering there are Generation 2 is coming up, and we might have a lot of critically endangered Pokemon from Generation 2. And yeah, Legendaries, we won't really be assessing Legendaries as, they're Legendaries. They're supposed to be rare. That's the whole point of them. Goodbye.